This is a very unusual campaign year. I think everybody feels it. We have a number of wonderful candidates to choose from this year, and they're all coming up here to be with us, and that's a wonderful thing. And beyond that, some of them are from up here. So I encourage everybody to get involved and stay involved. It's a long campaign season, and if you like what you hear today, please follow these candidates and come to some more events. There'll be more for people to see. We also are going to be doing some video recording today. So if you have family members or friends that couldn't make it, please watch for the videos from this event on YouTube. One of the tables will be recorded, so our videographer is Tim. He'll be over at this table over here. So if you don't mind possibly being on video, that would be a good place for you to sit. So we have a little bit different format for our forum here. We got this idea from the People's Choice organization, and what they're doing is we're going around the state and we're putting on events where we are talking about hiring the next governor. And an important thing to remember is the governor is someone who works for all of us. So it's important that we hire somebody who reflects our values and our goals. And also, if we don't do the hiring, if we don't choose a candidate, someone else is going to do that for us. So it's really important that we get involved and stay involved. We have 3 organizations sponsoring, or 4, sponsoring today's event. One is Our Wisconsin Revolution, which is Bernie Sanders' group, and we are involved in candidate elections all over the state. We also have involvement from Indivisible Chippewa Valley, and Ann, is Ann here? Ann is there. Ann is in the back, she's in the white, and she is with Indivisible Chippewa Valley. And we also have Aaron, where are you? Aaron Shapiro? Oh, there he is in the back. And he is with People's Choice and Working Families Party. And then Progressive Students and Alumni from UWEC. And Jeremy Gregor. Jeremy is over, he's going to be one of our facilitators. And so those are the organizations that got together to bring the forum together. And now we're going to start right in with the forum, and we are going to introduce our candidates. The candidates will be meeting with you in small groups, but we thought it would be a good use of time to introduce them all at the beginning of the program so that we can get the basics out of the way and we can dive right into the issues when the forum gets started. So we are going to go in reverse alphabetical order and have the candidates come up and spend 2 minutes introducing themselves and their campaign to you. And so our first candidate is going to be Dana Wachs. And Dana is from the Chippewa Valley. He's a representative from Eau Claire. And Dana will be taking 2 minutes to talk about himself and his campaign. And then when he's finished, our next candidate up will be Kathleen Vinehout. Please welcome Dana Wachs.
Morning, folks. Welcome to my legislative district. This is the 91st Assembly District. Welcome. I'll tell you, it's just such an honor and a privilege to represent Eau Claire in the legislature. It's been a wonderful learning experience, and I'll tell you this is the most important election this state has ever had. You know, I grew up in Eau Claire. My dad was city attorney and later city manager. My mom was a school teacher in Chippewa Falls, public school teacher. And I grew up and I understood and learned the importance of public service. And I don't think there's ever been a more important time than now for people to be active and people to be totally involved in the political system. You know, as most of you know, I've spent 32 years in the courtroom representing regular folks, representing people trying to get into the middle class and people in the middle class against very powerful, wealthy special interest groups. When I got into the state legislature, I went to Madison, and very quickly almost immediately, some of the lawyers who I'd been fighting against, lawyers who had represented some of the most powerful entities in the country, came parading into the legislature to give testimony about how there shouldn't be redress, there shouldn't be compensation for people who were poisoned by asbestos, and how regular folks shouldn't have a right to seek compensation in situations like that. And it became clear very quickly that this government, it no longer serves regular folks. It just plain doesn't. We've lost our way. We used to be a state with the Wisconsin idea, which functionally mandated that legislation coming through the Capitol building benefit the most amount of people possible. And where have we ended up? We've ended up with a government that serves only the most powerful, serves only the most wealthy in our society. I have a different vision for Wisconsin. We are fighting for the future of this state. We are fighting for the future of regular folks in this state. I have a vision of a Wisconsin where students are going to be safe in the classroom. Go to my website, danawachs.com. Take a look at what we proposed with reference to assault weapons and the like. I've been a hunter and a fisherman my whole life, but it's time that we do something about this scourge, this continual danger that we have in our schools. That's got to stop. I see a Wisconsin where we have health care for everyone, where we accept the Medicaid money and create a Badger Care buy-in system so that regular folks can get insurance coverage, because we can no longer depend on the ACA, Obamacare, because the Republicans in Washington are sabotaging it, and that needs to stop. We've got to be prepared to take care of our own. In terms of an economy, I see a Wisconsin where regular folks are justly compensated for the work that they do in the workplace. I support the $15 an hour minimum wage. I support rolling back collective bargaining, or implementation of collective bargaining. Collective bargaining, rolling back right to work, rolling back the prevailing wage legislation that Walker put through. Why? Because it's just. Why do we want to do that? Because people need to get compensated for the work that they do. And why do we want to do that? Because if you want a robust economy, if you want an economy that works, you've got to make sure that the middle class has disposable income. You've got to make sure that the middle class is growing. Under the present regime, it's shrinking, and people are not getting their just reward. I see a Wisconsin where we have work, where we subsidize and help people start businesses. Instead of Foxconn, which I fought tooth and nail, I think we should invest in our own people. Just for a second, think about what would happen if we put $3 billion into our own people. Their startups, their new businesses. You could have 10,000 businesses with $300,000 apiece. Instead of that, we're giving $3 billion to a foreign corporation to come here and give us substandard jobs. I'm on the WEDC board, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation board. I fought Foxconn to their face. It's a terrible mistake. We need to turn it. I see a Wisconsin that supports its education system, K through 12, through college, and through places like this, the technical college. That's the Wisconsin we need. That's what we need. And we need to support infrastructure, rail, highways, and broadband. That's what we need in this state. These are programs that will help regular folks. This is a just Wisconsin. That's the Wisconsin that we need. So I'm very happy that you folks are here today. It's a wonderful process that we're involved in. We have wonderful folks that are running. But we got to win this one. We got to win this one. I'm not a professional politician. I've spent my life in the court system. But I have a backbone, I have a resolve, and I'm going to win this election. Thank you very much.
So thank you for being here today. People are hurting. They don't have money in their pocket. Wisconsin's wages are 18th worst in the United States of all other states. And my vision is very different from where we are today. My vision is about putting people first. People at the center of state policy, people at the center of spending state dollars. That means supporting policies that make a difference in people's lives, like free tuition for tech colleges and two-year campuses, which is a bill that I recently introduced. It means accessibility to broadband, which has current policy is riddled with problems and woefully inaccurate. I'm a very different kind of candidate. I came to politics later in my life. I started off as a nurse's aide, a daughter of a union laborer. I got through college on my own because my dad, bless his heart, and his birthday is today. My dad said that college was wasted on young women. So those of you in my generation remember this. Getting through college was really difficult, so the free two-year campuses and tech colleges is a very personal mission for me. I taught health policy and ran the graduate and undergraduate program at the university for 10 years, and I know what it's like to live on food stamps and be without health insurance, both of which have happened in my life. Many of you know I milked cows from our family dairy farm in Buffalo County for over 10 years. I've been slapped in the face with a manure-filled tail of a cow, so Republican attack ads don't bother me. I'm the only one today here who has won multiple partisan races in a Republican-leaning area. A district I represent was won by Trump, won by Scott Walker 3 times. I've proved that I can win in places where Democrats have to win in order to win statewide. My campaign is about putting people first, not about putting consultants first. And that means working with what works in different neighborhoods all around the state. We are running a grassroots campaign. We have 25 action teams around the state. I invite you to join our campaign. I am ready to serve, and I ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
A lot of the people I work with are on the autism spectrum, but not everyone. So I've spent almost 2 decades working with teams of parents, caregivers, therapists, physicians, landlords, all types of individuals around Dane County that are all in this to help others. We're all compassionate people. And that's one of the reasons I decided to run, is because you may wonder, what is someone who works with people with special needs running for governor? Well, I've spent this long caring for other people so deeply and intensely that I know that I can bring that to a greater level. I can bring that care and compassion to the whole state of Wisconsin. I want to make sure that we do several things as governor. I want to make sure that we expand the Wisconsin DNR. The DNR is the watchdog of our environment here in the state. And without the proper resources, there's a lot of things that we're not going to be able to do. There's a lot of things that we need to protect, like our fresh water, and without a properly equipped DNR, we're not going to do that. I'd like to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I think Wisconsin should legalize marijuana, and I think we should begin building our infrastructure to accept vehicles of the future, not the combustion engine of yesterday. It's important that Wisconsin moves forward on all fronts, and I am looking forward to talking to more of you later. It's an honor to be here, and we do have a great assortment of people running, and I advise everyone to take your time and talk to all of us, because it's important that we take this election, and it's also important that Tammy Baldwin wins. So let's do this together. Let's win together. Whoever doesn't win the nomination, or if I don't win the nomination, I will certainly support them. And I think that's the way we win, is together. So thank you.
Thanks for being here, everybody. I'm Mike McCabe. I'm the one candidate in the race who was born and raised on a farm. I've had a chance to live on the farm. We we were dairy farmers. I've lived in the city. I know that so many people out there see a hopeless rural-urban divide. I see people who are really in the same boat. I see opportunity for us to build a Wisconsin that works well for everybody, whether you're in the city or out in the country. I've spent most of my adult life, decades, working to expose and break the grip of big money influence in our politics. I started and ran the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign for 15 years. I did that because I see a cancer growing in the body of democracy. And unless we cut that cancer out, Wisconsin cannot become the state it has the potential to be. We will not get government working for all of us and not just those at the very top unless we cut that cancer out. The Wisconsin I want to see is a Wisconsin that again deserves the reputation we had for generations as a beacon of clean and open and honest government. I want a Wisconsin where if you work, you won't be poor. I want a Wisconsin that aims to erase the words working poor from our vocabulary. I want a Wisconsin that recognizes the fear and the vulnerability that so many people feel out there. They see the robots coming and they know that there are more on the way. And they know that the driverless vehicles are coming. And there's so many people out there who are thinking, is there going to be a place for me in this society? Is there going to be a place for me in the middle class? And on top of that, they look at that landscape out there and they think, my God, I don't think my kids or grandkids are going to be as well off as I am. And that scares them to death. And I want Wisconsin to be a place that is committed to creating the kind of economic security and stability for everybody so that we leave no one behind. That means we have to make a commitment to a living wage for every worker, health care for all, debt-free education and job training for everyone, high-speed internet everywhere. I want Wisconsin to be a place that aims to be the first state in the nation fully powered by renewable energy. That's the kind of Wisconsin I want. But we are not going to get that Wisconsin unless we do one other thing. We have got to cut out that cancer. And I am running for governor because we will not get clean air and clean water from dirty politics. We will not get living wages from a dying democracy. We will not get anything more than thoughts and prayers from elected officials after every mass shooting, as long as those elected officials are paid to give nothing but thoughts and prayers. We have to commit ourselves to cutting out that cancer that grows in the body of democracy. I am running for governor to do everything in my power to create a system that works for all of us and not just a privileged few. We're all in this together. We leave nobody behind. We are all in this together. Thank you so much.
I'm Andy Gronik. Good to see some faces in the room from the last one that we had here a couple of weeks ago. I am the outsider in the race. So I spent 35 years helping struggling companies, many of whom could not go to a bank and get a conventional bank loan, to solve problems, to access capital, and to move forward and create good paying jobs. So that's what I did for 35 years. Now, I also took this event very literally. You're going to have the opportunity to interview me at each one of these different groups, so I'm not going to spend too much time up here, but I do want you to know that I've hired a lot of people, and I always advise people, if you're going to show up for an interview, you're not just the person who is being interviewed. I'm interviewing all of you, right? So I want to be prepared for that interview, which I am, and I want people to come with good questions that I think should be important. So my first question to all of you is, do you think politics as usual is working? Why or why not? We'll hand these out as we go. 2, if we keep doing the same things, do you think we should expect different results? Why or why not? Are you interested in hiring a candidate with a 35-year history of being able to bring people together to solve complex problems? Why or why not? Do you want to hire someone able to take a business-like approach to fixing a broken system so living here in Wisconsin is better for everyone? Why or why not? Why is Scott Walker beaten establishment Democrats 3 times in a row? What strengths must your nominee have to go toe-to-toe with Scott Walker and beat him? Do you want to hire someone who will fight just as hard for your family as I have fought for my own? Do you want to hire someone with an optimistic view of Wisconsin's future and innovative ideas to build Wisconsin's strengths and make it happen? Do you want to hire someone with the ability to convince people in 30 to 60 seconds that we have a plan that will make life better in Wisconsin and has a demonstrated ability to execute it? Do you want to win? If the answer is yes, hire me. We'll talk more about this later. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It's very good to be here, and thanks everybody for coming. My name is Matt Flynn. I'm running for governor. And to start with, I do want to thank the gentleman who shook my hand as I came through the door, and he said, Matt Flynn, I'm with you all the way. When you were with Green Bay, you threw for 6 touchdowns against the Lions. And just so we're clear, that's not me, it's a different Matt Flynn, but it's still good to be here. I'd like to introduce my wife, Mary, who's sitting over at our table. Mary and I have been married 41 years, and she's from Monroe, Wisconsin, cheesemaker. Met her at the UW when I got out of the service. I'm a Navy veteran. And we married and we settled in Milwaukee, where I practiced law for a long time. I was the chair of this state Democratic Party, state of Wisconsin Democratic Party, for 2 terms. We retired our debt. We elected a great governor, Tony Earl, great legislature. We elected Senator Bill Proxmire, who is my mentor and my guide in the Democratic Party. So I want to tell you very briefly why I am running for governor, and it's very, very simple. I'm not going to stand by and see our democracy destroyed. In Washington, Donald Trump is betraying us to the Russians for blackmail and for money, and the whole Republican Party has gotten in line behind him. Vladimir Putin is a murderer and a thief. Trump's scared of him, and however Putin insults him, he crawls over and licks his boots. I'm not going to put up with that. In the state level, you have Scott Walker. Scott Walker is a policy mule for a Republican donor cartel. He represents the donors. We are being farmed and colonized by donors and people from out of state. The Foxconn deal is something that's especially galling to me, and I'm going to tell you why. By the way, my platform is on our website, forwardwithflynn.com, and every one of the issues you can see, I've had it plain and simple in plain English. But Foxconn, this is a Chinese company with a slippery record, and Scott Walker is paying them not $3 billion, $4.5 billion, $300 million for 15 years off the top before any other revenue expenditure for the privilege of taking our water. Taking 7 million gallons a day out of Lake Michigan, which is the same as the city of Waukesha takes, and returning it in polluted fashion. And he's paying for their roads, their electricity, and much of their payroll. And now Kimberly-Clark has jumped in and they want 17% of their payroll. At what point does the governor simply say, I'm not paying 17% of anybody's payroll? You're a for-profit business. He gave them the eminent domain power to take people's homes. 3 people in Sturtevant, Wisconsin. I don't know if you know where that is. Great little town. Right across the border from Milwaukee and into Racine County. Knock on the door. We're going to buy your home. You're not buying my home. Oh yes, I lived here. It's my father's home. We're taking your home. And they took it. And there's a lawsuit in Racine County right now. No private company in Wisconsin, when I'm governor, is going to get the eminent domain power to take my private property or your private property for their own profit. That's unconstitutional. I won't permit that to happen. He's also exempted them from Court of Appeals jurisdiction. So when they lose in Racine, it goes right to that Supreme Court with the 5 Republicans on it. Right now, our democracy is under attack. It's under attack in Madison, it's under attack in Washington. I think we need a strong governor. Next fall, this coming fall in October, there's a lot of good people here, but there's going to be 1 Democrat on that stage, 1 Democrat against 1 Republican, and you have got to decide who you're hiring to do that, who represents your interests, your ideals. I was the chair of this party, I unified it once, and I'm asking you to hire me, because there's nobody who can be more aggressive, more articulate to take this policy mule for the donors on than Matt Flynn. Put this Navy vet in the governor's chair, you'll see what happens. It'll be the end of this nonsense. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. The reason I'm running for office is all around broken promises, whether it's broken promises to our little kids in the K through 12 system, broken promises in the University of Wisconsin system, especially as it relates to people leaving the system and taking their research money and going elsewhere. It's broken promises around middle-class Wisconsin, which is almost disappearing because of healthcare issues, because of pay issues. It's broken promises around the issues of natural resources, which are so important to the state of Wisconsin, whether it's mines, whether it's water, whether it's the park user fees. There are broken promises all across the state of Wisconsin, and that's why I'm running for governor. I have to tell you, we have a great cast of characters that are running for office as Democrats. Every one of them good. I would bet that at the end of the day, you will hear a lot similar things from all of us. I can tell you that I believe I am the candidate that can beat Scott Walker. I've won 3 times statewide with all of your help, correct? 3 times. The last time I won 70% of the vote. In 70 of 72 counties, I even won Ozaukee County. I think I'm the first statewide Democrat that's ever, a Democrat that has won Ozaukee County. I can beat Scott Walker. The other things that are around the issues of where I live. I was born and raised in Plymouth, Wisconsin, met my wife in kindergarten, and we lived kind of an Ozzie and Harriet life. And Plymouth is the cheese capital of the world, and the reason I know that, they got a big sign downtown that says cheese capital of the world. Kathy and I and my family and my 3 kids and our 6 grandkids have lived all across the central part of Wisconsin, starting my career in Toma, Amro, Oshkosh, Oakfield, the 3 O's, Verona, and the Fox Valley. We have lived and worked all across the central part of the state where about 40% of the vote happens. Lastly, I've actually run things. I've been in charge of school districts, I've been in charge of school buildings, state agencies. Right now I have the obligation to make sure that 860,000 kids and 100,000 adults, and we are not going to arm those adults. I can tell you that right now. That work in our schools. I will go to jail before I allow that to happen. And those experiences will help me run against Scott Walker. We can win, and we will win next November. Thanks so much. I'm really looking forward to the day to answering your questions.
Shall who? Right? How many people think facing reality is really easy? Especially our current reality, right? My name is Michele Doolan, and my decision to run, do you see that little boy at my table over there in the Spider-Man sweatshirt? I'm here for him. And I'm here on behalf of the people that are on the outside looking in that have to live the current reality. There's no time for gray areas anymore. We're either willing to fight for democracy or not. My decision to run was based on the fact that I was tired of waiting for a candidate that is more concerned about a political career than they are about solving problems and the future of Wisconsin. Is anybody here familiar with the term hangry? Like you're so hungry and you're single-minded and that's what you do, and you know you're gonna bite your husband's head off, or at least I do that. That's kind of a good metaphor for America right now. American people, especially the working class, is hangry. And right now, the rest of the issues won't be the main priority for each individual until we solve that. We can't just put a Band-Aid on it. It's a sucking wound. We have to heal it from the bottom. So reality number 1, people can't afford to live in Wisconsin on low wages. They can't. It doesn't matter how they're trying to live or what they're buying or whatever. It doesn't matter. We can't afford to live in Wisconsin on low wages. So raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour is the solution. And I'm going to fight for that. Firm. There's no negotiation. Because if we don't, people will leave. If they're smart anyways. You can't live on that. Okay, reality number 2. Rich people against the single-payer healthcare are willing to let you die in order to maintain their lifestyle of success. Think about that. The people on the top who are against single-payer healthcare or healthcare for all are willing to let you get sick and die and suffer to maintain their life. It is time for the United States to join the rest of the developed world in this. And Wisconsin could be a leader. And I would start with Badger Care as a public option for everyone. It's time to hold those in charge of letting all this happen to us responsible. And not just the obvious evils, but the complacent as well. We can't change without looking at things and being willing to look at things differently. Forget what you think you know and see what we thought worked doesn't. Business as usual isn't working. And it's not where I'm from or what I did before that matters. It's about what I will do if I'm elected governor. I will fight for $15 an hour minimum wage. And I will fight for Badger Care for all. No one will fight harder than I will because I live in that reality right now, like the most of us. I'm Michele Doolan, and I'm the candidate that represents the future of Wisconsin.
Hi, I'm Bob Harlow. I grew up in a town called Barneveld, Wisconsin. I don't know if you know where that is. It's about 30 miles west of Madison. My deep roots in the state. 3 of my grandparents were professors at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and my family had a woodworking business growing up, so I've seen many different facets of life in Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin well, and I know how to lead Wisconsin forward. I got a physics degree from Stanford. I have a background working for different tech companies, and I know the technologies that are going to drive our economy forward. I know how to innovate and improve every area of our government to make it work better for the people of Wisconsin, and that is what I will do as governor. What's happened these past couple weeks with the reaction to the shooting in Florida is disgraceful. The NRA is only concerned with gun sales. There are people who think the NRA is representing their right to own a gun. That is not the case. The NRA wants to sell guns to anybody and everybody, regardless of their motives. And I will stand up to the NRA. As governor, I will work to ban the sale of assault weapons in Wisconsin. I will work to close the gun hole loophole. I am not afraid of the NRA, and we are going to score a victory for the people of Wisconsin and stop our kids from getting killed in their schools. I also worked very hard to get Tim Burns elected. We really had all the communication channels working on overtime to get Tim Burns elected. He didn't win, and quite frankly, he just got outspent. But I knew he was the right candidate. I knew that he had the best philosophy, had the best character of the candidates, and that's why I supported him. And I will support the people of Wisconsin with the same determination. I knew Tim Burns was going to lose that election. We worked as hard as we could to get him elected, and I will work that hard for what is right as governor, and we're going to make real progress in our state, no matter what the special interests want. So, thank you, and I look forward to talking with you today.
Hi. Hi. Good. Hi, everybody. Fire away. Your turn.
I'll start. This is, I heard you at the Children's Theater, and I've learned a little bit about your background. An impressive fighter. This is a divisive time in our country. Maybe part of the cancer that you speak of in our democracy is, in my opinion, partly due to people talking over each other instead of a more common way that most of us interact in our communities
Right.
when we disagree.
Right.
What's your style in leadership, given especially the new governor is surely going to have a Senate or an Assembly or both in Republican hands?
Even if there's an uncooperative legislature, even if it's in total Republican hands, don't forget that the governor has the partial veto authority in Wisconsin, and that will provide tremendous bargaining leverage, even if it's a Republican-controlled legislature. That partial veto authority is so extensive that you can take a sentence that says Wisconsin will not do this and turn it into Wisconsin will do this. You can reverse the meaning, and it takes a 2/3 majority in both houses to override you. So I would like my chances. And they would have to then understand that they're going to have to negotiate and hash out differences with that new governor. And I would be open to saying, look, how can we get to a better place together? How can I have priorities and I have values that I want to see reflected in public policy. I'm going to fight like crazy for those policies. And if you simply send me legislation that reflects the exact opposite approach, I'm going to use that partial veto authority to turn it back to something of my liking. That alone will create the environment where they're going to have to negotiate, and I would be open to that negotiation. Work that had me calling out Democrats and Republicans when I saw wrongdoing. But I've also been in a position of developing relationships with both Democrats and Republicans, and I have no problems. I come from an area that used to be represented by Democrats and now votes overwhelmingly Republican. I've met more Trump voters than you can imagine. No two are alike, by the way. And it's possible to find common ground. We don't write people off. We don't say you're stupid and not worth talking to. Listen, be open to finding that common ground, because common ground exists to a greater extent than we realize. We feel very polarized, but I think we actually have more in common than we know. And I would just pursue that.
Let's hear some more questions.
Yeah.
First, I want to thank you for your strong efforts to keep Wisconsin a clean government state. But it's eroding.
It is.
How do you fight the war chest of Scott Walker?
Well, you can't beat Scott Walker with money, because he'll have vastly more than anyone. And you also will not beat Scott Walker by simply telling the people of Wisconsin what's wrong with Scott Walker. He has run and won 3 times for governor, and he has faced a not Walker campaign, and he's had tens of millions of dollars thrown at him, and he's won despite it. I think we beat him with organized people, with volunteer networks everywhere. We beat him with people power and with vision. Instead of simply saying what is wrong with Walker, we say what we're for. We offer people a vision of what Wisconsin has the potential to become, and that is something people haven't been offered for a very long time. They're used to hearing Democrats say what a scoundrel Walker is, without saying, here's what we want Wisconsin to be. We have to offer that vision, and I think if we do it, people are ready to respond. And, he's never gotten above 53% in one of his elections, so it's not like you have to flip 10 or 15 or 20% of the vote. We're talking a few percent moving in another direction, and we have a new governor. But I think it's going to be people powered, and it's going to have to be people powered, because look at all the candidates in this field. Not a single one of them raised even close to 1/10 of what Walker just got done raising. Put us all together, and we didn't raise 1/3 of what Walker raised in 2017. So it is fantasy land to think that we're going to beat him with money. We've got to beat him with ideas, with a provocative agenda and a provocative vision, and we've got to beat him with organized people. Neighbor by neighbor, community by community, that's how we beat him, and he can be had.
What's your question for you?
Actually, health care for everybody is really important to me.
1 minute left to this round. 1 minute. Yeah.
So, I know that has been a divisive thing, and the GOP in Congress is trying to undercut Obamacare. what can we do as a state to create a unified
Yep.
concept that helps us good for everybody?
Yeah, and Wisconsin can be a leader that sets an example for the nation to follow. We could make Badger Care, which is now available to only low-income and disabled people, we could make Badger Care a public option for everyone by changing a single word in state law. Right now, state law lists the eligibility requirements, and it says if all of the following apply, you're eligible. If we change the word all to any, Badger Care becomes a public option and anyone could buy in, and we should change that word.
I'd love to see a public option on the exchange
Yep.
that I have to shop at.
It's
So sweet.
the latest numbers say that Badger Care's costs are 38% lower than what is out there on the private insurance market, and it's really good insurance. It pays from day one. It pays for medical care. So many people have this insurance that they pay for medical care out of pocket all year long because of the huge deductibles. So that's a step we can and should take. Yeah. Thank you.
But the governor is throwing signed a deal. And here's what I would do when I'm elected governor. I would work on that deal.
And I want you to ask some
There
questions,
is
and I want you to step back
no
and
reason.
for a little
First
bit
of all,
more subdued.
do I
And
think
those
it's
folks
going to
are a little bit more
happen?
subdued, and I'm sure you do.
Law, horrible
Remember to step
by,
up.
we're talking about Fox.
Your voice heard
But
and
assuming
contribute
it's going to
as
be
much as you're comfortable with. and as
for
much as
$4 or $5 billion, the state of
step up
Wisconsin
and step
should
back,
be
and
able
I'll be
to
here
help Fox
make sure that everything
pay living wages, to have living great benefits for example, it's going to be a huge complex. Why aren't we compelling them to put solar panels on that huge complex? There's enough room there to provide electricity for 33,000 homes. They should be providing transportation for people from the north side and the south side. Washington and to that plant, a lot of people that aren't working, it's not because they don't want to, they can't work. And if all these things are going to happen, we should be compelling Foxconn to be the best corporate employer in the state of Wisconsin. And $5 billion by God. Now, do I believe that Foxconn is going to succeed here long term? No. I have to. In 10 years, we won't have any. So I'm not sure what we're going to do. But as long as we are stuck with the law, and I don't believe the law is going to change, the best we can do is cut a better deal with them, making sure that the workers have a good wage. We have a chance here to really change the culture of how employers treat their employees in the state. For $5 billion, we should be able to do that.
And some schools, identity, and reliable paying jobs.
They said it wasn't the lives of non-residents, and it destroys the cost of us tax. It's prohibition.
Yeah, the question, there's kind of two parts and I don't want to say your question over, but the bottom line question is, do I support the legalization of marijuana? The other one is the issue of criminalization of use of drugs and also criminalization, I would take it even further, criminalization of nonviolent activity. Certainly there is the prison pipeline. Pipeline to prison. So the people that are probably nowhere of circumstances, and I'll use a small example. If you're a young kid in Washington Public Schools doesn't have driver's ed, they get picked. That's not stopping them from driving. They get picked up once, twice, the third time. They're going to spend time in county jail. It's the start of their
landed a state job after
the end of their career as free people. I do not support the legalization. Per se, I think we should have a referendum on the state of Wisconsin and the state of Wisconsin. I support the legalization for medicine use. I'm a cancer survivor. I get that. I support doctors have that ability. But I believe a referendum would be my best interest. But we also have to criminalize, it's more important to criminalize use in a way that doesn't take people
I live in the Madison.
Divisive time, and I'm curious about your strategies in solving problems. So, superintendent, and how do you go about leading with this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we have to run a positive campaign. I mean, certainly Scott Walker's got a whole bunch of things that he's done wrong. We could talk about that forever. But if we run a positive campaign, that is a good start. Frankly, I hear that a lot from people as they go around the state. Be positive, continue to have a positive message. But in turn, at the end of the day, I will be governor and likely with at least one of those houses being Republican. I have worked with Republicans for the last 10 years of my life, even before that as governor of the state superintendent. To accomplish this, we have to find common ground. Do I feel that there can be common ground around the issue of guns in the state of Wisconsin? Yes, I do. But I have also believed that we can find common ground on transportation issues in the state of Wisconsin and resources. I have done it. I have a small example. People, for the most part, believe me that because I'm in this position of state superintendent, that I fight every day against vouchers. Do I think vouchers are a good idea? They haven't.
1 minute left in the session, everyone. 1 minute.
But I have worked with the voucher community to make sure that there's more accountability and transparency. I do that every day. That is a really important thing. You can't draw lines in the sand like Scott Walker has done in many times. Transportation is a good example.
We have time for one more question, but I'm sure Tony will be around afterwards to answer any questions that you all have.
Related to education, it has bothered me that there is such a proliferation of suppliers of public education. And how do we
No, they really don't, do they?
span the gap of all of this diversity of organizations that are providing education and still have some control and some
Right. The big basic question is around we have charters, we have regular public schools, voucher schools, program schools. From anything that...
All right, so that is the end of session one. The end of session one. If everyone wants to wrap up and move to the next table, we will get started with session two. Thanks, everyone.
The state almost got passed last time that would show right on your property tax bill what you're paying for vouchers, what you're paying for charters, what you're paying for a public school. That is critical. I mean, that is something that we do that, frankly, I think all sides do. I'm sorry for talking so long, and I'll be glad to answer questions later. Somebody...
Like today's money thing? First of all, I am more reflective of Wisconsin than and if you don't, I actually think I am reflective of Scott Walker, because when people don't show up to the polls, because they're looking for the lesser of two evils, and they look the same, whatever, I mean, you can't get much more the same, different. And because I'm kind of a secret weapon, because Walker's not going to figure out the threat whatsoever, and there's no amount of money that is going to beat Scott Walker, because he's got the co-runners. So we have to, actually run on behalf of the people and to motivate more voters to come out. And by motivating more voters, more people have choices. It's hard to fool a bigger crowd than a smaller crowd. So I just want to build the people, actually show up to the polls, and keep folks in our election, and to be there. I want people to vote.
Yes.
And I want democracy, not what we've got right now.
What's your name? Dad would like to know what a candidate can do in rural areas. And
yes.
I guess maybe they're misinformed about Democrats, maybe they're misinformed about politics. I think there are.
I like the questions they asked me, but we're going to keep to the time limit. So, but if you want to ask more questions after this, you definitely can, but we'll go on to have questions.
Yes.
So I think we need to figure out how to be disrespectful, how we can reach people, and not be afraid to talk about guns, not be afraid to talk about what is access to health care. Actually say exactly what we think, exactly what we need, because I know that the vast majority of Wisconsinites agree with big constitutional access to health care.
I was born and raised in Wisconsin on welfare. Trust me, I understand. And it's worth it. People in Wisconsin are worth the fight. Like, honestly, I'm not the person that wants to move to Canada every time the president gets elected. I'm going to get my way. I've fixed it. Trust me, I've already been called.
I do. Without water, there's no life. So, I tend to think in terms of watershed thinking as opposed to municipalities or, political structures or definitions. What do you think about placing all water that Wisconsin can access above or below the ground under a public trust jurisdiction? It's there for all of us to be able to use. Nobody should be able to use it at all for profit or spoil it.
Gotcha. So because we're one world ocean, right? Okay. I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think that would be. The government's role as far as natural resources is to make sure that no one venture spoils it for everybody else. And so if that would be a way to kind of keep everybody honest, but give people control over it, I'm all for that.
Well, I think
that's about what we do. No, you don't have it?
I think that we're
Yes.
we may want to represent that way, but we can build the initial simply by reversing the water. So I don't think it needs to do with the tax.
Apart from the fact that I'm the shortest one. I'm the only 100% citizen candidate out there. And the difference is I face a bigger uphill battle to win this primary. It's true, because I don't have the advantages they do by being recognized. And so I will need people's support, and I'm okay with that. And there are some things I'm not willing to do to get votes.
So if you fill out your comment now,
I'm not in it for me. Supporting the culture no. We need to get rid of those. I mean, they took the education system, the budget, and just pulled a piece out of the middle, Jenga, and threw it over here. It wasn't like they offered another budget for other people. Plus, the people that are using that program are the people that were already sending their kids to private schools, and the people that already had the money to do so. So why did the taxpayers want to do that? So, no, I'm against the voucher program. I would like to, everybody has a right to a good public school education. And we can't do that if we're spreading money. So we need to concentrate on that.
So politicians take the chance especially South Walker, you save some money now. We need to make smart long-term investments that are going to save us money.
1 minute left in this round.
Well, if we restore public education and fix what was wrong with public education rather than subtracting it, rather than blowing it up and doing something else that's not working either, we need to focus on rebuilding the foundation of that. And I had a single mom. We were on welfare. My mom wanted me to go to Catholic school. And the church and the organization had scholarships. So the people who are needy, often there's a way to do it. Because the church advocates for that. But I don't think taxpayers who don't believe in my Catholic education should advocate for that. Does that make sense? Yes.
I want to make sure that, especially at our universities, the important research and conversations that happen there are never subject to and that research
that's good.
their work
anything yet.
With that discussion, would you comment on choice itself, which seems to be the justification for the corporation?
Oh, the choice between whatever choice.
Any choice. You have the right of...
Time for round two. Time for round two. If candidates can please rotate. Thank you.
Rather than working to improve the school, it gives us an out to not do that. I mean, in some rural areas, the entire identity of that area, the biggest employer, the best jobs ever, is the school. So we need to do well to support that school, so we can support these communities around it.
Hello, Group 2. How are you? I'm Andy Gronik. Good to see you. Hey, before we kick off with questions, I just want to say I started this process with questions up there because I am being interviewed, and you should ask me tough questions and expect good answers, and hopefully they'll reflect the fact that I share your values. But as the person being interviewed, I have questions for you too. So we'll hand those questions out. If you're up to it, please answer them because you should be thinking about it. We got a big field, but I think what we want here is someone who does share your values, but that you can imagine can stand toe-to-toe with Scott Walker and beat him, because we have to win this election. Critical. So what are your questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll start us off.
Yes, sir.
So a short answer, this is going to be a tough, it seems that the Republicans lately are winning a kind of popular contest in the following way. When we spend money, when we invest in higher education, green energy, it costs some money. It costs often the taxpayer something. But the idea, I mean, this is rocket science to me. I'm a mathematician. I work at the university. It's an investment. It's an investment in our future. How do you convince the Wisconsinites that electing a Democrat, is in their interest?
Right. So a lot of ways I could answer that question, but I will say this. I knew nobody in politics when I started this journey. Nobody, not one person. I cold called the Democratic Party chair and asked for a meeting, and I sat down with Martha, and this is what I said. I know I'm a Democrat because I know how I've lived my life, and I know how I care about people. But I do not understand the conversation that the Democrats are having with businesses, because business is part of the solution. And labor working together with business in the state of Wisconsin is how everything great has ever been built. So we need to be able to have a dialogue where we recognize that business is indeed part of that solution. That doesn't mean that we give away all of our environmental resources. It means that we strike a balance in the state of Wisconsin, and we look for ways to respect our environment, but at the same time create an environment where we can have economic growth. So I can have that conversation with people, because we have 30 seconds, folks, 30 seconds for most people to be able to convince them that we have a real plan, that it can be executed, and it will make their life better. That's what I do. I did it all over the world. For small, medium, and large businesses, we have to have a plan that they believe will work and somebody that can execute it, and that's exactly why I'm here.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So kind of following up on tax cuts. That's all every year. $100 tax cut is right. How do you convince people that, all right, it costs me $100 more, okay, what do you get in here? It's kind of following up the market.
Right.
So how do you sell it? All you're going to hear is free spending liberals.
Yeah.
Sometimes spending is okay. How do you show that?
So tax, that's their magic, right? That's their playbook. So think about it from this perspective. I worked with struggling companies to help them identify plans so that they could be successful. If my plan was simply to go out and spend more than you make, I don't think I would have been very successful as a consultant, and most of those businesses wouldn't have been successful either. But investing in the future of Wisconsin, now that's not a mathematician's idea, that's just dumb logic, okay? We've stopped investing in our roads, and now we're the second worst roads in the country. If you look on my website, and I encourage you to do so because there are real plans there and issue pages that will talk about this, I'm advocating for a 20-year transportation infrastructure plan. A plan that looks at roads, rail, light rail, buses, ports, airports, everything that's needed to prompt community and economic development. That's an investment. But listen, it's not rocket science. It's those kinds of investments that actually create the growth that we need to be thinking about for the whole state. So you do have to invest. But Governor Walker just jammed a $3 billion, now $4.5 billion deal down the throats of the state of Wisconsin, and did so promising a 25-year payback, which is what you're talking about, payback, and he can't even live up to that because now it's $4.5 billion. He assumes only 10% come from Illinois. That payback period is so far out in the future that nobody could reasonably estimate it. He cannot stand toe-to-toe with me and talk about what he's done from an economic development perspective and make any sense whatsoever, because I've done it. And I'm looking forward to exactly that debate. So bring it. Yes, we do have to invest. Next. Come on, I'm fired up. Let's go. Anybody? Yes. I'm sorry?
Planned Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood funding. So think about it. This is a debate that's always teed up as red meat, right? Okay, because you have a life debate, you've got a choice debate. I'm all for choice. I don't think people should be messing with women's rights to do with their body what they think they should do with their body. But you know what? When we sit down and talk to our friends and neighbors about this, it's not an argument that can be won. What I do all the time is I say to people, and I'll give you a quick story. I was at the Sheboygan County Fair, and somebody looked at me and said, "You guys are the people that tear heads off of babies." And my response was, are we really going to have that conversation? Because I know that you know that in the state of Wisconsin, 60,000 women and men receive access to health care that they would not otherwise receive if not for Planned Parenthood. Let's have that conversation. Do you think that's important? Do you think that's helping people of our state? Because if you do, maybe we can agree to disagree about our positions out here, and we can begin to support an organization that's all about the health of our communities throughout our state. And I talked to that person about Planned Parenthood and guns and schools and so forth. And when I was done, he said to me, he said, "I'm not sure I'm going to vote for you, but I'm going to think about it." We can have that conversation, folks. We can do that in our state.
And that is
Don't always make it about the divisive stuff.
If you can
I
rotate.
100%
This is
support
the
Planned
final
Parenthood.
round.
100%.
Final round, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, vote for me. Hire me. Hire me.
Greetings. How are you? Thank
You
you
want to
for
sit on the
sharing
second row here?
your afternoon.
We've been asking questions, so we're
That's exactly the same.
Starting on the second row, I think I'm going to go first again and throw this watershed thinking question back out again. Helping. It's really important to me to see that water is protected. It equals life, without which we have nothing going on here in Wisconsin. And so I would like to see all waters exactly placed under underground water, surface waters, anything that Wisconsinites access and need to access, be placed under public trust jurisdiction as opposed to whoever gets there first can grab the most and whatever they can do.
And I would say along that way, our Constitution does say that water is in the public interest. It's called a vested right that all of us share. And so the most recent bill that the legislature passed about the high capacity wells that set a principle that is basically the principle is first in with the longest straw is the one that gets the water. It's really important that we understand when that bill passed, it fundamentally changed the principles of the state that have governed us since the beginning of the state, since the Constitution was written. And for that reason, it may be that principle is overturned. There are many things that the legislature and the state can do to protect water. And I will start by saying we must enforce the existing laws, and part of the gutting of the Department of Natural Resources, taking away the scientists that are there, losing employees, we've seen a big loss of public employees, is that enforcement that needs to be done isn't done. I'll give you a specific example. There was an audit that was done of pollution discharge, and what they found is that the factory farms, the CAFOs, were not having their inspections that needed to be done,
And the reports when there was a manure spill were not even being read by the Department of Natural Resources in many cases. So certainly there wasn't the future prevention that needed to happen, whatever was going on there. When I think about the problems that exist right now in western Wisconsin related to the sand mines, the monitoring of the changes in the groundwater is not being done by the public. It needs to be done all over the state, and people need to know what's happening to the watershed. So I have a very sad story about a horse named Apples that died because of the likely because of the pollution in the sand mine between Independence and Whitehall. And what happened is that when they tested, the family tested the well after the horse died, and the vet said that the liver shows toxic substances. The well water had 10 times the allowable limit of arsenic, and the family didn't know it. And when the sand mines existed,
aren't there many violations now in regard to natural resources in general?
And the audit that I told you about the wastewater discharges gave us a glimpse into how great the problem is. And one of the things I asked for was to show what the violations were by year, and specifically what type of violation. And what the spreadsheet showed me is that the enforcement has dropped way off. And the audit showed us that 95% of the time, when there should have been some type of action by the state of Wisconsin against the polluters, they did not take the action they should have taken. These go from the gamut of notices saying you're out of compliance to the legal settlements that would result because the person refused to become into compliance and ended up using the penalties and enforcement powers of the state to either put them out of business or to cease what they were doing. And we have seen that change dramatically over the last, since 2011. And the audit, if you ever want the details, the audit gave us a really good picture of what's going on. This was an audit that was done this past year on wastewater, on the permitting related to discharges.
Is anybody in the back over here? Yes. Are the districts working with the Republicans at all? How would you handle it?
I'm glad you asked me that question. I serve on the audit committee, and I used to be the chair when the Dems had control of the Senate. And audit controls, we look at both the finances of the state and how programs work. And that's really important because, as we say, we are the steward of the people's dollars. We want to make sure the dollars are well spent. The way that I have found to work with the Republicans is to share common values. So when we share the value, we're the steward of the people's dollars, then when we find examples where the money's being wasted or could be better spent or the program needs to be changed, then we find that common ground to make the program changes that need to be made. I'll give you another specific thing that happened this week. So this week, the legislature took up a bill called risk corridors in wonky language. It's related to holding down health insurance costs. It's actually a provision under the Affordable Care Act. And the Republicans, some Democrats voted for this bill, and some Republicans and some Democrats voted against it. But what it did was allow the state to use like a way to share the risk among insurers, so that one really bad case doesn't make a single insurer end up going bankrupt or being in trouble.
1 minute left for this round.
I remember back, for those of us with gray hair, back in the 1960s, we had Blue Cross and Blue Shield that were both non-for-profit, and they used something called community rating. It's some of the same concept behind it. Minnesota tried this idea and was able to lower premiums by 20%. Lowering premiums is a concept, it's a value that both the Democrats and Republicans agree. So the simple answer is to find that common ground, and we were able to do it, at least in a small way, this week. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, that's time for this round.
mentioned the sustainable energy in vehicles. Like, how would you go about promoting sustainable energy as far as infrastructure, like charging for vehicles and getting, we can get jobs from sustainable energy as well. So, like, how would you go about increasing our infrastructure?
Good question. I think that the green energy market is one of the highest paying job sectors right now. Wind turbine engineers are getting paid like $55,000 a year on average. And those are the kind of jobs that would be involved in developing our new infrastructure. I don't think we should build our roads for the engines of yesterday. I think we should look ahead and look forward as we move away from the combustion engine. I think that with the marijuana legalization, revenue from that can also help pay for infrastructure repair. We believe that we should put a tax on corporations that pollute, a carbon tax. And this will not only provide revenue for what we're talking about, but it will also force these corporations into best practice, because they're going to keep paying taxes more and more if they don't start changing their practices. And that would go for a place like Foxconn as well. Someone asked me earlier, do you think Foxconn's going to live on after the election? Well, by the time we take office, whichever one of us takes office, the ground is going to be broken. So the question becomes, how do we hinder their ability to pollute? How do we slow that? How do we repair that? And putting that kind of tax on Foxconn, for example, is going to help keep them in check. We're going to see how this plays out, but there's a lot of pollution that's at stake with this organization. And so revenue from a carbon tax is one more way to help bring money into the fold. Yes, sir.
How would you accomplish this with a very strong likelihood that for sure one, but both houses most likely would be Republican?
There's a lot of topics that comes up with. It's almost like President Obama when a lot of legislation he tried to push through was stymied because he was stuck with, the GOP favor. But I think that we need to approach this differently than has done before. The challenge is not, you against me. The challenge is what things exist in Wisconsin that we can see together that affect us all. And I think a good example of that is, how do we sell some of our ideas to these other individuals who are on the other end of that are part of this polarization? I believe that human food is a big issue. I don't see it being talked about. I hear water being mentioned, and that's a big part of our campaign, but human food is at stake here. And one way to sell that to the other voters in the state, and I think I'm doing this as an example, is we're looking at an endangered species called the rusty-patched bumblebee that is, it's rare in this state, and it's responsible for pollinating a lot of our food. And once this insect starts disappearing more and more, the price of food is going to go up and up. So perhaps some of you are able to digest the fact that we have an insect that's endangered, that deserves our attention. There may be other people on the other side of the voter spectrum who may dismiss that, but they're going to digest it because
1 minute left for this
the
round.
price of food is going up and up and up. Pay out of their pocketbook for this instead of it being some, fantasy that isn't really applicable to them. So fresh water and food are ways to, appeal to a broader base of voters. And I realize we can talk about more specific things, but those are two, I think, brilliant examples of why all of Wisconsin can become concerned about issues in the environment that might give them a hope to pass through legislation versus other topics. So,
Let's grab one more question before we have to go. Yeah. One more, anybody?
Sure.
Prison. We got roughly at least twice, maybe 2.5 times more prison population than various in the population demographics.
And that is time for this round. Time for this round. Candidates, please rotate. Thank you.
I believe that we should reform our eyewitness identification program. There's a lot of people that are incarcerated by being misnamed at identifications. People going to jail when they're not guilty, they're incarcerated. As someone who works with people with disabilities, our goal is to help them transition into the community. Prisoners are also in that situation. How do we help them successfully transition to the community so they don't end up back in prison again?
Thank you so much. This is awesome.
We're rolling out, I'm not sure it's out yet, but we're rolling out a package on sustainable energy in detail. We need to promote that as much as possible. We should be manufacturing things like turbines in the state, and we sure as heck ought to be implementing and doing what we can, tax incentives and the like, to make sure that we're putting up energy systems that make sense. You know, right now, we have payphones that are putting manure all over these fields. And so what's happening there? Groundwater's getting polluted. And the biologics that are getting into groundwater, those are disappearing. We don't know what will happen with nitrates. It could last forever. That's another resource. I mean, let's take a look at that as a resource. We should be collecting that and taking it to biodiversity. Because every time we spend $1 in Wisconsin on fossil fuels, it's $1
Freight companies are not paying for the purchase.
And we need to take what we have here and efficiently use it as best we can. So that's something we're talking about. Wind, solar is the future.
Charge a modest
And so when we get better, we should be manufacturing something that a lot of capacity, space available,
and make everybody pay small step forward. Speaking of paying, the very large trucks that do most damage need to pay in their vehicles enough to cover at least part of the damage that they're doing right now.
We'll get on to our next question.
There's a lot of ideas out there.
I'm in the neighborhood with you. I knew your dad, and I knew his neighbor, Dave Anderson, who you knew as well. And,
he used to live across the street from my dad.
Helped his dad push his RV out of deep mud when he was getting a little older and thinking he could still drive. Those people, your dad and Dave, were politically different. This is a divisive time. But as neighbors, I can attest, working with them to solve everyday problems. And when something was stupid, you could call it that. The idea to arm teachers, for instance, currently dialogue. But there was still a capacity to work together.
There's lots of consider.
Surely our next governor is going to be faced with part of the government. What's your strategy?
Well, I'll tell you what my strategy is, and you guys, what we do in the civil.
Right, and all you have to do is drive outside and clear, go back to the south, boy, when I go to bed, sometimes the gas price drops by 17 or 25 cents. So just
I've been able to work on some bills. Some are awesome, just impossible. But some bills, and I remember having a very complex bill that went through the legislature that a Republican named Jim Ott and I authored. And it dealt with very complicated annuities. It was really complicated bill, but the governor had the bill signing, didn't invite me. So they all went into the governor's room We go in there, and the Republicans got in there and said, "Where's Davis?" And so they signed it that day, but then they held a second Brooks and Republican legislators said it's only fair that Bill, I wrote it together. But it was pretty important. And they actually forced the governor to hold a second. That's the thing we find try to we also need to be darn well ready to be all things to show them that we're serious. Yeah, what is your name?
John. Yeah, I'm going to ask his question because several people have raised it here. How do we expect as liberals to win against the Republican machine when they have so many dollars?
Well, we've got to raise money because our research shows that some of the voters, less informed voters, are voting based on the last 2 or 3 jobs. Yeah, blame them. So we've got to be able to compete on that front. I can compete on that front.
But what if we can't?
But we need to make our
Yes, it's been now surviving for 7 years. Honestly,
David
no
Obey
statement. So it's totally possible. And in fact, I want to see it happen everywhere. I personally like to talk about alternatives. I totally want to take the drain from
when we try a case,
Pomona to Madison. I think it's terrible companies focus drains on back.
1 minute left.
Had to pay off that contract, which is now cost the state $69 million in addition to the $800 million they got back. For us, the taxpayers, paid $69 million to get out of that contract. Instead, now the government is push train.
Policy is focused on
It just has to be done. Go anywhere in Europe, you see trains everywhere. It's the wave of the future. So it's like exasperating.
Yeah, Mike.
But I want to congratulate you.
Mike's a lawyer too.
Thanks for spending Saturday. Let's do more than just speed thing. I don't like this.
What's your rural
Time for this round. Candidates, if you could please rotate to your next group. Thanks so much, everyone.
Every time I give a speech up north, people are calling potholes, they call them Scott holes. Because I mean, and it makes sense, but I can't pay for it, so I use that term. They don't like it.
By the way, leadership on climate change does matter, it really does. And the way we can have the biggest impact is to fund groundbreaking research at our universities that will develop technologies that increase the ability to transmit energy, the ability to store energy, the ability to harvest energy from renewable sources. And then, once that exists, people who would have before built coal-fired power plants, now the economics are in favor of the technologies we developed in Wisconsin. And that's going to bring revenue back to Wisconsin and create good paying jobs in the state too. So that's what I would do.
Thank you. My turn. What experience do you have today with managing large organizations of any kind? Budgets, people.
That's a fair question. I think few office holders have been Fortune 500 CEOs, and I would ask what experience do any of these candidates have running a Fortune 500 company or a state government. So it's really something that the skill set you bring into it determines how successful you'll be, not if you've done it before.
So I didn't get the answer.
Well,
What experience? What is your
I have never managed hundreds of thousands of people, if that's what you're asking. I've never been the CEO of a company of 100,000 people. No.
But you have, it's an honest question.
No, I mean,
about your background.
that's my honest answer. Well, that's my honest answer. I mean, my family had a woodworking business growing up, so I mean, I know business. I know how management works. But I would say probably had the best background of all the different candidates. But if you're looking for someone who's a Fortune 500 CEO, I don't think you're going to find him with anyone. But thank you. And Mike?
I like
well, that's going to happen in any election. There are interest groups, and because of the way our political system is set up, that is unfortunate. They can inject a lot of money into it. But the way Democrats win is through turnout. And that's the way Patty won the Senate seat. She did 20 points better than in 2012. And it was because the whole state was focused in on making calls, on getting people out to vote. And so I would focus on the core campaign technologies to be able to reach people and make sure that we are, that's how Obama won twice too. We need a good ground game. That's how Democrats win.
probably what year have they say interest I'm actually taking a looking at your candidate. How do you fight for the market? 25 years old.
Well,
What makes you credible?
Well, I think that's somewhat of an irrelevant question. I mean, what it comes down to is when you see two candidates up on the stage, one who seems like they're a little sharper, and one who seems stronger is going to win. And, well, you can ask yourself that question. I'm not the best judge. But I do really believe that up on stage against Scott Walker, I will run circles around him. And I also think that this year we have a lot of great energy to make change in Wisconsin, and that I'm the best candidate to articulate that change because I'm best represented.
Yeah, I guess I'm concerned about Russia statewide. And it's something that I struggle with in my rural residential area, having access to the internet. I think that's really important for everybody. What would you do to build access to the internet?
Sure. Well, the cost...
That discussion is about the internet, making internet accessible.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to mention this too, because I forgot to do it last time. So if you'd like to be on our email list, please sign up. So, if we wanted to build out 1 gigabit fiber internet to every household in Wisconsin, the cost of doing it would be $8 per Wisconsin resident per month over the course of a 40-year period. And by the way, don't be shy. We have an unsubscribe feature. We'll never share it. So there is really no downside. So $8 per month per Wisconsin resident, or per Wisconsin household over the course of 40 years is the cost of bringing 1 gigabit internet And eventually, that investment obviously will pay dividends for the state of Wisconsin. So hopefully it gets
1 minute left for this round. 1 minute.
Public or some combination. I would be committed to expanding broadband access significantly because that's what the people of Wisconsin need to compete in the global economy, and we need to provide that. And furthermore, we should install conduit under every new and rebuilt roadway so that if you ever want to expand broadband, put some new utilities through, you've already built it. Politicians like to kick the cost down the road. Scott Walker does it, but we need to look long term and make smart long-term investments like conduit.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, we'll start.
Sure.
Things going. I'm just thinking about increasing the voter turnout. It seems to be a really important thing. How can we protect our voting system in Wisconsin better and invest in getting people to the polls to vote?
Okay. How do we increase turnout? Get more people to vote and get them to the polls. What the Republicans have done is found a way to govern with a minority of the vote. This is not a democratic society. It's a creeping fringe of a communist government, in my view, and I'm going to put an end to it. Now, as long as we have a Republican legislature, they've done a lot of things. For instance, one of the things they tried to do was, for early voting, they said every city or municipality can have one location. In Ladysmith, that's okay. In Milwaukee, one location, and we went to court and beat that. Now, I would do three things. I have the executive order that they can't interfere with, and that means designated a lot of polling locations, putting on more polling workers. He got $1.5 million for a Ukrainian pro-Putin businessman who managed to get American citizenship named Lenny Blavatnik. $1.5 million in Iowa. Walker did for and Mitch McConnell got $2.5 million, and they never complain about Russian hacking. And this guy Walker will cut. I will add staff as many locations as possible. I will use executive orders. Number one. Number two, as long as the legislature has put through voter ID, that's going to take the legislature to overturn it. And if we get a Democratic one in 18, fine. But in 2020, I will veto the reapportionment so we don't have that. We got 200,000 more votes than they did in 2012, and they got 60 of 99 assembly seats. And they passed right to work when 200,000 people more in the state didn't want it. I will use executive order, I will use veto, and I will use the bully pulpit to do everything I can to expand the opportunity within the confines of the law. When it comes to getting people to the polls, I was the chair of this party for 2 terms, and we did that. I know how to do it. Having a governor who is also the chair of the Democratic Party is not a bad idea, because I do know how that can be done. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Not quite sure how to frame this. So the whole DAPL fiasco in, I think, South Dakota, or North, I don't remember which one, where they had peaceful protesters against the pipeline. Basically, the company had the police being used as their own private security, and where people were being beaten and shot with rubber bullets and all these things. And their governor was supporting that stuff. What are your thoughts on the mechanism behind how the state's becoming used as security by private interests against people, and maybe how to avoid that?
The question is how to avoid the police being used by private interests in security and hurting citizens. 2 things. You talk about the pipeline. I don't believe in private companies being given the eminent domain power. Private property should not be able to take private property for their private profit. So as a Menards wants to build a new plant, I don't think they should take your houses. Foxconn took free housing service, and the pipeline took private property. That should not happen, number one. Number two, and I will veto that. We have what's called the Vanna White veto, where it's strongest in the country. You can adjust letters and numbers. I will be Shakespeare when it comes to the Vanna White veto. You will never see anything like it with Matt Flynn, and I will use executive order. Did you know that Sean Duffy, you've heard of Sean Duffy? Bad news, really bad news. Well, Sean Duffy, I was told up in Park Falls when I was up there, when he has a town hall meeting, which is very strictly regulated, he is a police officer with a gun as the MC. So you go in there and you're afraid to ask a question, because if the tone is deemed impolite or the guy says unconstitutionally, sit down, and you don't, there's a law that most people don't know. If a police officer gives you an unconstitutional order, you must obey it until it's overturned in the court. So if a police officer says leave here and you don't have to, and you don't, you've committed a misdemeanor as state. I mean, well, because they don't want people deciding for themselves on gray areas. But for a congressman to have an armed police officer as MC, that's the party of Putin. The Russians have penetrated the Republican Party. Trump praises Putin. Putin's a murderer and a thief. Trump says he likes him. And Bill O'Reilly, even, bad news himself, said, well, he killed people. And Trump said, we're so innocent? You think John Kennedy would have said that about Khrushchev? You think Truman would have said that about Stalin? We don't have an American president. We have a Russian president. And that is seeped down to people like Duffy, bullies who shouldn't be in Congress. I don't know how he got into Dave OBC. I will put an end to that.
Matt, I am very pleasantly impressed of the whole group of candidates here today. What is the one thing that Matt Flynn has that can be discussed?
This is Mike O'Brien, who I saw in Eau Claire at a meeting about 2 weeks ago. It's good to see you again. Here's the thing. I'm interviewing for a job. I'm asking you to say, Matt, next fall in October, when there's only one person on that stage against Scott Walker, who's it going to be? You've seen everybody, basically. Who's it going to be? I'm asking you to say me, and here's one reason. I'll give you a number of reasons. One is, I'm a Navy veteran, and I'm the only veteran in this race. And I have found, going around the state, that in Trump territory, when I ask my fellow veterans to stand up, they stand up, and we have a good rapport. When on the ship I was on, we had people from Mississippi, we had people from Wyoming, New York, California, Wisconsin. There was no north-south divide. There was no urban-rural divide. There was no class divide. There was no racial divide. We were shipmates. We worked together, we stood watch together, we went on liberty together, and we took care of each other. This is a 72-county campaign. The other thing is, I've practiced law all my life. I was the chair of this party. I've been a partisan all my life. And you're going to see some contrast between a nonpartisan approach and a more conciliatory approach and a more aggressive approach. You decide. But when I get on there, Scott Walker, the policy mule for the Republican donor cartel, is going to hear it from me. And I'm going to take him on. I'm not Mary Burke. I'm not Tom Barrett. I knew them. I liked them. They're my friends. It's the wrong message. I liked Hillary Clinton. Wrong message. Matt Flynn is entirely different. You have to decide the degree, I think, of aggressiveness you want on that stage, which is simply as possible. And who do you want as your champion to stand up there? And I did it once when I was chair, and Lee Dreyfus was the governor, and we had no governor. And for 2 years, we got Tony Earl, and I was the spokesperson for the party. I know how to do it. I'd like to do it again. And I just ask for your support. Thank you.
Does aggressive mean negative?
Pardon me?
Does aggressive mean negative?
No. You will not hear.
And that is time on the round for the speed dating portion of the event.
I am here for my vision of Wisconsin.
Everybody,
you
please give each other a round of applause.
Without saying that Trump and Walker have done some bad things. I mean, I'm going to say it.
Give your facilitators a round of applause for doing an awesome job. Facilitators, stand up.
And he said, I'm telling the truth, and they think it's hell.
And of course, give the candidates a round of applause for all coming and doing a wonderful job.